Commander Vareli Threx stood at the center of her ship's command deck, the light of distant stars reflecting off her silver armor. Around her, the crew of the Aurelian Dominion fleet worked in complete silence. No one dared speak too loudly in her presence. Her reputation alone was enough to quiet even the most fearless soldier. She was known throughout the galaxy as the Unbroken. In 50 years of conquest, she had never lost a battle. Her fleets had crushed rebellions, silenced pirates, and even forced ancient empires to kneel. Her name carried both fear and respect, a living legend of the Dominion. To Vareli, battle was not cruelty. It was order. Every planet she conquered became peaceful under Dominion rule. Every defeated enemy was another star secured for civilization. She saw herself as a guardian of balance, not a destroyer, but deep within her, buried under discipline and glory, was something she never admitted, an emptiness that victory could not fill. The Aurelian High Council had summoned her after her latest triumph, the subjugation of the Thraxian outlands. The war had lasted months, but the outcome was never in doubt. When she entered the Great Hall of Command, the counselors bowed their heads slightly, their glowing eyes fixed on her in silent acknowledgement. "Commander Threx," said the eldest among them, his voice calm but proud, "once again you bring the Dominion glory. The stars themselves bend to your will." Vareli bowed slightly, her tone even. "I serve the Dominion's order. Nothing more." The old counselor smiled faintly. "And yet there remains one world that does not understand order. A small defiant planet in the Sol system. Primitive, untamed, they call it. Earth." Vareli raised an eyebrow. "Primitive? Then why does it concern us?" "Because," another counselor interrupted, "their defenses are crude, but their resistance has cost 3 of our scout fleets. Their species fights without reason or logic. They do not surrender. They destroy themselves rather than submit." The room fell silent. The Aurelians valued logic above all. The idea of a species choosing destruction over obedience was beyond comprehension. The eldest counselor leaned forward. "We need this world brought under control. You will lead the mission. Bring us their world, or bring us understanding of why they fight so fiercely." Vareli's expression remained unreadable. "It will be done." And so began her journey toward a small blue planet that would change her forever. The fleet left Aurelian space with quiet precision. 50 warships in formation, engines glowing like stars cutting through the black sea of the void. Every soldier aboard felt pride in serving under the Unbroken commander. Victory was a certainty. Vareli stood before the vast viewing glass in her private chamber, watching the darkness flow by. The faint hum of the ship's core filled the air like a heartbeat. Her second officer, a young strategist named Seren Ka, approached with a respectful bow. "Commander, initial scans show the human world is rich in oxygen, water, and energy. Primitive, yes, but vibrant." "Vibrant?" Vareli repeated, turning her gaze from the stars. Seren hesitated. "Their world is alive, Commander. Oceans, storms, cities full of motion. Even their transmissions, music, stories, voices. They communicate constantly." Vareli allowed herself a faint smile. "A noisy species, then?" "Yes, Commander," Seren said. "And they seem to believe themselves alone in the universe." That amused her more. "Then let us teach them the truth." 3 weeks later, her fleet emerged from warp at the edge of the Sol system. The sight of the sun flooded the command deck in gold light. Planets drifted in orbit like jewels in the dark. "Status?" she asked calmly. "Fleet is ready. Human defense satellites detected near their moon. No major weapons that can harm us," the tactical officer reported. "Proceed carefully," she ordered. "We observe first. Strike later." Her fleet spread out, scanning the human system. They intercepted signals and voices, transmissions, news broadcasts. To Vareli, it was all chaos. Humans argued, laughed, and feared all at once. They built machines that reached space but still fought wars among themselves. "Uncoordinated, unstable," she murmured. "How have they survived this long?" "Perhaps they thrive in chaos," Seren suggested softly. Vareli glanced at her officer. The idea was strange but interesting. Then a sudden alarm rang through the deck. "Commander, one of their orbital stations has locked weapons on us." She turned sharply. "Return fire only as warning. Disable, not destroy." Seconds later, a pulse of plasma streaked from the Aurelian ship, hitting the human satellite. The station exploded in a flash of light. The silence that followed felt different, heavier. Within minutes, human military frequencies exploded with panic. Fleets scrambled. Missiles launched. Their primitive weapons were useless, yet they fought with desperate fury. Varelli watched as tiny human ships, fragile and slow, rushed toward her fleet. Their movements were untrained, but their intent was unmistakable. They know they cannot win, Seren whispered, astonished. Yes, Varelli said quietly, and yet they fight. Hours passed. The Aurelians destroyed several human defense units. The battle should have been over quickly, but the humans kept returning. For every ship destroyed, 2 more appeared. Their communications were filled with words she did not understand. Courage, unity. Her scanners picked up one repeating call sign among the chaos. Captain Reynolds, reporting for duty. Whoever this human was, he coordinated others directing attacks, saving his people. His voice carried determination, not fear. Even when surrounded, he refused to retreat. For the first time in her long career, Varelli felt something strange while watching an enemy fight. Respect. These humans, she said softly, do not behave as expected. No, Commander, Seren replied. They seem proud. Varelli looked out at the blue world below. Its oceans shimmered like liquid gems, its continents alive with lights. Pride without power is foolish, she said, though her tone lacked conviction. Still, they interest me. Later, alone in her quarters, she reviewed human history files gathered by the scouts. She read about their wars, the endless conflicts fought over land, belief, and survival. She expected barbarism, but instead she found patterns of resilience. No matter how many times humanity fell, they rebuilt. They were fragile, short-lived, divided, one yet unstoppable in spirit. Varelli leaned back in her chair, feeling the weight of curiosity she hadn't felt in years. In every war she'd fought, she had understood her enemy. Predictability had made her victories easy. But these humans, they broke every rule of logic. When an alien commander who had faced galaxies without fear begins to question why an enemy fights, something inside her changes. And in that quiet moment aboard her ship, she wondered not for the first time what it truly meant to be strong. Days later, her flagship, the Aurelian Starbreaker, entered low orbit above Earth. Human resistance was fierce but hopeless. Cities glowed beneath the night clouds. Yet instead of feeling triumph, Varelli felt unease. Her officers waited for the final order, the command that would begin the invasion. Commander, Seren said quietly. Orders from the High Council. Begin planetary subjugation. They want a complete surrender. Varelli stared at the planet. A world that refuses to kneel, she murmured. Yes, Commander, Seren replied. But they cannot resist forever. Varelli's silver eyes narrowed. Perhaps. But I want to see the face of this resistance. I want to understand what makes these humans so
unyielding. Her voice was calm but carried something
new. A trace of emotion that none of her officers had ever heard before. Prepare a capture team, she ordered. Find this Captain Reynolds. Bring him to me alive. As her fleet descended toward the planet, the night sky above Earth lit up with streaks of fire, both alien and human ships clashing in the atmosphere. Commander Varelli Threx, the undefeated conqueror of 1,000 worlds, looked down at the blue planet that dared to fight back. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel certainty. She felt interest. She had faced countless dangers, but she didn't know yet. The greatest challenge of her life was waiting for her on that small world called Earth. The battle over Earth had entered its second day. What was supposed to be a short, clean operation had turned into a storm of unexpected resistance. Commander Varelli Threx stood at the command bridge of her flagship, the Aurelian Starbreaker, her calm eyes following the shifting lights on the tactical screen. Red dots marked the human ships. Blue showed her own fleet. By all logic, this should have been over hours ago. The humans' technology was primitive. Outdated energy weapons, slow propulsion, fragile armor. Yet somehow they kept returning. Her second officer, Seren Ka, approached. Commander, we have destroyed 2/3 of their orbital defense grid, but their fleet continues to engage us. Casualty rate among their pilots is extremely high. Varelli turned slowly. And still they fight? Yes, Commander. Seren hesitated, lowering his voice. They seem to have no fear of death. That statement lingered in the air. Fear of death. It was a natural law for almost every species. To the Aurelians, logic demanded self-preservation. To fight when defeat was certain made no sense. "Show me their transmissions," Vareli ordered. The crew complied, activating a stream of intercepted human radio signals. Voices filled the command deck. Tense, determined human voices. "Squad 3, stay in formation. We're losing fuel, but we're not leaving them behind. Protect the station. No retreat." Vareli listened quietly. None of them begged for mercy. None sounded broken. Their tone was filled with courage and something she couldn't name, something fierce and emotional. One voice stood out. Deep, steady, full of leadership. "This is Captain Reynolds to all units. Keep the line! We may lose ships, but we'll hold them here. Earth stands today?" Serin looked surprised. "That's the same call sign as before, Commander, Captain Reynolds." Vareli's gaze hardened. "Bring me everything on this human." Within minutes, data appeared on her display. It was a rough profile. Captain Samuel Reynolds, human military officer, pilot of a small strike ship. He had led several desperate counterattacks already. His fleet was losing, but his presence kept them fighting. Vareli watched the footage of his ship weaving between plasma bursts, dodging fire from vessels far stronger than his own. He fought with reckless precision, guiding damaged ships away from destruction while striking her fleet's weak points. Something inside her stirred. Admiration, perhaps. She had seen countless enemies, but few fought with such heart. The Starbreaker shook as a nearby explosion flashed through space. A human missile had hit the side of one of her escort ships, tearing through the hull. The damage was small, but the audacity was not. "Commander, we have confirmed visual on Reynolds' ship," Serin reported. "He's leading a small group toward our forward carrier." Vareli gave a small nod. "Intercept him. But no destruction. Disable his craft. I want him alive." Her voice was steady, but her heart felt a faint, unfamiliar excitement. She wanted to meet this human, this strange creature who refused to yield. Down below, inside the fragile human cockpit, Captain Samuel Reynolds wiped sweat from his brow. The heat from his ship's failing systems made the air inside thick and heavy. His co-pilot, Lieutenant Harris, shouted over the alarms. "We're out of plasma rounds. Shields at 10%. Reynolds' jaw tightened. "We're not done yet." They dove through the glowing wreckage of destroyed ships darting between the giant Aurelian vessels. The alien fleet looked like silver daggers against the stars. Sleek, perfect, terrifying. Harris stared at them in awe and fear. "How can we fight that?" "Same way we always do," Reynolds said quietly. "Together." He banked sharply, firing the last of their missiles at an enemy cruiser. The blast rocked the massive ship, forcing it to retreat slightly. Cheers echoed through the radio. "Nice hit, Captain." But Reynolds didn't celebrate. He could see it, a massive flagship approaching, darker and larger than the rest. Its design was beautiful, almost regal, but its presence filled him with dread. "That one," he whispered. "That's their leader's ship." On the Starbreaker, Vareli watched his small ship approach like a spark defying a storm. Her officers prepared weapons, but she raised a hand. "No. Hold fire." Her gaze stayed locked on the display. "Let him come closer." Serin hesitated. "Commander, that's dangerous." He will not win," Vareli said simply. "But I want to see what he does." The human fighter darted toward the Starbreaker, firing small bursts of light. The plasma barely touched her shields. Yet he kept coming, again and again. "He knows it's hopeless," Serin said. "Why does he—" "Because he believes," Vareli interrupted softly. Her words made Serin glance at her in surprise. "Believes in what?" Vareli looked at the planet below. "In something we cannot see." The fighter hit the ship's side with an energy pulse, damaging one of their sensors. Vareli's patience ended. "Lock tractor beam," she ordered. "Bring him in." Inside Reynolds' cockpit, alarms screamed as a golden beam wrapped around his ship. "Captain, we're caught." Harris shouted, "Try to break free." Reynolds barked, but the controls were useless. The small ship trembled violently as it was pulled toward the alien flagship's docking bay. He clenched his jaw. So this is it. The ship was swallowed by the glowing hangar bay of the Starbreaker. When the airlock opened, Reynolds found himself staring into a massive metallic corridor, guarded by tall alien soldiers in silver armor. They were elegant and silent, their glowing eyes fixed on him. He raised his hand slowly. "Guess this is the part where you take me to your leader." The guards didn't reply, but their weapons guided him forward. The corridors were clean, glowing faintly with blue light. The air was cool and calm, too calm for a warship. After several turns, he entered a vast command chamber. At its center stood a tall, graceful figure in dark armor, Commander Vareli Threx. She turned to face him, and for a moment both stopped in silence. He expected a monster. Instead, he saw a being with calm silver eyes, intelligent and focused. She expected fear, and instead she saw a man standing straight, his gaze steady. "You are Captain Reynolds," Vareli said in a soft, even tone. "And you must be the one leading this invasion," Reynolds replied. His voice was tired but calm. "I've seen your ships burn cities. Why are you here?" Vareli tilted her head slightly. "To bring order. Your world resists logic. Your people fight when defeat is certain. That makes no sense." Reynolds gave a small, humorless smile. "Maybe not to you, but to us freedom is worth the fight. Even if we lose, we don't stop trying." Vareli's eyes narrowed. "Freedom? You destroy yourselves for an idea?" "For a choice," he corrected. "To live on our own terms." The room grew silent. Around them, her officers exchanged uneasy glances. No one had ever spoken to their commander like that. Vareli, however, was not angry. She was curious. "You could have saved yourself," she said. "You could have surrendered." Reynolds' reply came quickly. "And live as a slave? No. I'd rather stand and fall than kneel and survive." Something in his words struck her deeply, a small crack in the wall of her certainty. After a moment, she spoke again. "You fight without hope. That is not strength. That is chaos." Reynolds shook his head. "You're wrong. Hope is exactly what keeps us fighting. We don't stop because we believe tomorrow can still be ours. Maybe that's what you don't understand." Vareli fell silent. She didn't know what to say. No one had ever dared to speak to her like this, not even her superiors. His words were reckless, but they carried truth. For the first time, the great commander felt something she hadn't known before. Doubt. When the guards led Reynolds away to confinement, Vareli remained standing, staring at the empty space where he had stood. Seren approached quietly. "Commander, what are your orders for the prisoner?" Vareli didn't answer immediately. Her gaze was fixed on Earth through the viewing glass, the blue planet that refused to surrender. "Keep him alive," she said finally. "I want to learn from him." Seren blinked. "Learn, Commander?" "Yes," her voice softened. "For the first time, I want to understand why they fight." That night, as the ship drifted in Earth's orbit, Vareli sat alone in her quarters. Her reflection in the dark glass looked different. Not the face of an unbroken commander, but of someone searching for something she couldn't define. In the silence of space, she whispered softly to herself, "They fight for something unseen, but real." For the first time in her long, victorious life, Commander Vareli Threx felt a strange and powerful thought, that perhaps strength was not only found in conquest, but in conviction, and that realization was just the beginning. The stars outside the Aurelian starbreaker burned quietly as the ship circled Earth. From orbit, the planet looked peaceful. Blue oceans, white clouds, and continents glowing with faint light. But Vareli Threx knew the peace was only on the surface. Beneath those clouds, humans were still resisting. Inside the ship's holding sector, Captain Samuel Reynolds sat in a transparent energy cell. His uniform was torn and a bruise darkened his cheek, but his eyes were steady. He had not begged, shouted, or shown fear. When the guards left him alone, he spoke softly to himself. "Still breathing. That's a start." Through a hidden speaker, Commander Vareli listened. She had ordered his cell monitored, not for security, but because she wanted to hear how this human behaved when no one watched. She expected anger or despair. Instead, she heard calmness, a man thinking, not breaking. She turned away from the console, her mind restless. Her second officer, Seren Ka, entered the room carefully. "Commander, the High Council demands an update. They ask why the human world still stands." Vareli's voice was quiet. "Tell them I am gathering intelligence." Seren hesitated. They grow impatient. They want the invasion completed. "Impatience," she replied, "is what makes mistakes." Seren bowed and left, but the worry in his eyes did not fade. The crew whispered that their commander was changing, less certain, less cold. Vareli noticed it too. Ever since she had looked into Captain Reynolds' eyes, something within her had begun to shift. Later that day, she walked into the holding chamber herself. The guard stepped aside silently as she entered. Reynolds looked up from his seat. So the Conqueror finally visits her prisoner. Varelli folded her hands behind her back. I am here to understand you, Captain Reynolds. You and your species, he smiled faintly. Understanding is a good start. Usually invaders skip that part. Her expression didn't change, but his words caught her attention. You speak freely for a prisoner. I've already lost my freedom, haven't I? All that's left is honesty. Varelli studied him. Your people continue to fight even when logic says surrender. Why? Reynolds met her gaze without fear. Because we don't measure life only by logic. We measure it by choice, by hope. You can take everything from us, cities, weapons, even lives, but not our will. Varelli frowned slightly. Will without reason is chaos. He shook his head. Will is reason. It's what keeps us human. His voice was calm, but the words carried weight. For a long moment, the commander said nothing. Then she asked, Do you believe you can still win? Reynolds' answer came softly. No, but I believe we can still matter. Something in that sentence struck her deeper than she expected. Still matter. The Aurelians had forgotten what that felt like. For them, survival and order were everything. But humans fought not only to live, they fought to mean something. Varelli ended the meeting abruptly. You will remain here until further notice. As she left the chamber, her steps were slower than usual. For the first time in years, her certainty trembled. That night, Varelli returned to her quarters and opened the ship's archive of human history. She read their wars, their art, their music. She watched their images. Humans laughing, crying, exploring. They were fragile, yet full of color. Her world, the Aurelian Dominion, was perfect but empty. No laughter echoed through its silver cities, no children played in its gardens. Everything was balanced, efficient, and silent. She remembered her youth when she was trained never to feel. Feelings were disorder, but now, watching human faces light up with emotion, she began to wonder if order without feeling was truly living at all. The next day, alarms echoed across the ship. A power surge rattled the corridors. Varley rushed to the command deck. Report. Saren's hands moved over the console. Energy core overload in the lower deck. Containment fields are failing. Before she could issue orders, a voice cut through the static. Commander, the human prisoner has escaped his cell. Varley's eyes narrowed. How? Unknown. He bypassed security somehow. She turned toward the lower deck view and saw it on the screen. Reynolds running through smoke and light, heading straight toward the reactor chamber. Seal that section, Saren shouted, but Varelli raised her hand. No, wait. Something told her he wasn't running away. Moments later, she saw him at the reactor's main console, his hands moving over the alien controls. He didn't attack anyone. He was trying to stabilize the core. Commander, Saren said, astonished. He's saving the ship. Inside the chamber, Reynolds coughed as sparks flew. The air was hot, filled with smoke. He didn't understand the alien language on the screens, but he could read the energy patterns. Years of flight experience told him what to do. He connected 2 circuits and shouted, Come on, hold together. The lights flickered, then steadied. The rumbling stopped. The danger was gone. Guards stormed in, weapons ready, but Varelli's voice came through the intercom. Stand down. Do not harm him. When she arrived a moment later, she found Reynolds leaning against the wall, exhausted but alive. Why did you do that? She asked quietly. He smiled weakly. I was on this ship too. Didn't feel like dying yet. You risked your life to save your enemy. Reynolds shrugged. Maybe I saw people worth saving. Varelli stared at him. No one had ever spoken to her like that. He had saved not only her crew, but her as well. The soldiers around her looked confused, unsure whether to respect or fear the human. Finally, she said, Release him from the cell. He will remain under observation, not as a prisoner. Her officers exchanged shocked glances, but none dared question her. Days passed. Reynolds was given a small room near the observation deck. He was watched closely, but he behaved peacefully. Sometimes he asked questions about the ship's systems, sometimes about Aurelian society, and sometimes when Varelli visited, they simply talked. At first, she asked him strategic questions, why humans fought, how they led, what they valued. But soon the conversations changed. They spoke about smaller things, music, oceans, the colors of Earth's sunsets. Reynolds described the sound of rain on metal rooftops, the smell of the sea, and the laughter of people at night. Vareli listened in silence, her imagination painting pictures of a world so alive it hurt. "You miss your world?" she said one evening. "Of course," Reynolds replied. "It's messy, noisy, and full of mistakes. But it's home." Vareli looked down at her hands. "We lost that long ago," he studied her. "You can find it again. Maybe not on your world, but somewhere inside yourself." The words settled in her heart like seeds. Meanwhile, tension grew within the crew. Many officers whispered that their commander was being influenced by the human. Saren Ka confronted her privately. "Commander," he said, "the crew questions your judgment. They fear you've become sympathetic." Vareli turned to face him. "Sympathy is not weakness. It is when it clouds duty," Saren insisted. "The High Council will not forgive hesitation." Vareli's tone sharpened. "This is not hesitation. It is understanding. If we destroy without understanding, we become the chaos we claim to end." Saren bowed stiffly but said nothing more. When he left, Vareli stood alone looking out at Earth. Her reflection in the glass seemed unfamiliar now, softer, thoughtful. That night she visited Reynolds again. He was sitting by the window, staring at the distant curve of his planet. "They're still fighting," he said quietly. "Even now down there." "Yes," she replied. "I can see the flashes from orbit." He turned to her. "You could end it. You have the power. Why haven't you?" Vareli hesitated. "Because I'm no longer sure what victory means." Reynolds nodded slowly. "Then you're starting to understand us." Their eyes met. For a long time, neither spoke. Two enemies standing on the edge of something neither had words for, respect, perhaps even friendship. Finally, Vareli said softly, "Your people fight for freedom." "What do you fight for, Captain Reynolds?" He smiled gently. "For the right to choose who I am, even if the universe says no." When she returned to the bridge later, reports came in from the Dominion. The High Council's message was clear: destroy Earth within 48 hours. Vareli's hands tightened behind her back. She looked at the blue planet shining below, the home of a species that refused to kneel. For the first time in her life, the great commander felt torn between duty and conscience. As the message screen faded, she whispered to herself, "I have faced every danger in the galaxy, but this choice may be the hardest." Outside, the stars burned quietly, as if waiting to see what she would decide. Commander Vareli Threx stood alone in her observation chamber, gazing at the cold stretch of stars outside her flagship. The light of distant suns flickered across her silver armor, but her eyes were lost in thought. Something inside her had begun to change, something she didn't understand and couldn't control. The name Captain Reynolds echoed in her mind again and again. She could not forget his eyes, filled with defiance, courage, and a strange kind of compassion. He was a prisoner aboard her ship. Yet she often found herself checking his cell status almost as if she was concerned. Concern was a weakness for an Aurelian commander, or so she had always believed. The Aurelian Dominion had always taught that emotions were distractions, that victory came from logic and order. But after meeting a human, she began to question that belief. For the first time in her long life, Vareli Threx, the Unbroken, felt uncertain. The growing doubt the war with Earth was dragging longer than expected. Her fleet had lost more ships than she cared to admit. Humans fought with strange tactics, unpredictable, desperate, and clever. They didn't follow logic, yet somehow their chaos worked. In the strategy hall, her officers argued over how to crush Earth's resistance once and for all. "Their spirit is strong, but their bodies are weak," said General Kor, her second-in-command. "If we bombard their cities, they will kneel." Vareli shook her head slowly. "They will not kneel. They will rise again, even from ashes." Her officers looked at her in silence. None dared question her out loud, but she could feel their confusion. Was their commander losing faith? The human in the cell late that night, she went to the detention sector where Captain Reynolds was kept. The guard saluted stiffly as she entered. The air smelled of cold metal and sterilized dust. Reynolds sat calmly in his cell, his eyes half closed. His once bright flight suit was torn, but he still carried himself like a soldier. Vareli stopped before the energy barrier. "Why did you save your enemy?" she asked. Reynolds looked up, puzzled. "You mean when your ship's core almost exploded?" "Yes, you could have escaped in the chaos. Instead, you stayed and stopped the chain reaction. You risked your life to save mine. Reynolds gave a small smile. I didn't do it for you, Commander. I did it because it was the right thing to do. We humans, we don't need a reason to help someone even if they're our enemy. Varelli frowned. That is illogical. Why protect someone who came to destroy you? He leaned forward slightly. Maybe that's why you'll never beat us. You fight to conquer. We fight because we care. About each other, about freedom, about life itself. Varelli didn't respond. His words struck something deep inside her, something that had been asleep for centuries, a spark of humanity. After leaving the cell, she walked through the corridors of her ship in silence. Her reflection glided across the smooth metal walls. For the first time, she noticed the faces of her crew, tired, fearful, mechanical. They followed orders without question, like machines built for war. Was this what the Aurelians had become? Perfect soldiers but hollow inside? That night, she accessed the ship's database and began studying human history. Wars, revolutions, acts of unity and betrayal, all painted a complex picture of the species. They were far from perfect, yet something about them shone brighter than any Aurelian victory. Humans were not afraid to feel. They cried, laughed, loved, and fought fiercely for ideals invisible to logic, hope, loyalty, and compassion, and Varelli began to envy that. The hidden mutiny, a few days later, strange whispers began to circulate among her officers. Some said their commander had grown soft. Others believed she was under human influence. General Kor approached her during a strategy briefing. Commander, he said firmly, we need to end this war before the Council grows impatient. You hesitate too much. The Council demands victory. Varelli stared at him coldly. Victory? At what cost? At any cost, Kor replied. If we destroy their planet, no one will ever question Aurelian strength again. No, she said sharply. There will be no planetary destruction. We will continue the blockade until they surrender peacefully. Kor's jaw tightened. Peacefully? They never will. You've seen it yourself. They will fight until they die. Then we will find another way, she said quietly. After the meeting, Kor exchanged dark glances with the other commanders. Varelli knew rebellion was brewing, but she no longer cared about her own safety. What mattered now was understanding the truth behind humanity's strength, an unlikely alliance. That night, the alarms rang. The ship shook violently. The power grid flickered red. Varelli rushed to the command bridge. Report, she shouted. A junior officer stammered. Commander, there's a reactor leak in the lower engine bay. Without hesitation, Varelli sprinted down the corridor, her mind racing. As she reached the bay, she found Reynolds out of his cell, working furiously on the control panel. Reynolds, she yelled. How did you escape? He didn't look up. Less talk, more fixing, Commander. Unless you want us both blown to dust. She ran to assist him. Together, they stabilized the failing reactor. Sparks showered the floor as they cut power conduits and redirected coolant flows. When the final circuit stabilized, both stood covered in soot, breathing heavily. You could have escaped again, Varelli said softly. Reynolds smiled weakly. Guess I'm bad at running away. For the first time, she smiled back, just a small, genuine curve of her lips. You are the strangest creature I have ever met. Truth and change. After that day, Varelli stopped keeping him in a locked cell. He stayed under watch, but was allowed to walk in restricted areas. She spoke to him often, about humanity, about war, about what it meant to fight for something greater than oneself. He told her stories about Earth, about music, oceans, mountains, and laughter. She listened quietly, imagining a world so alive and colorful. One evening she asked, Why do you fight, Reynolds? You know your chances of winning are small. He looked at her with calm eyes. Because some things are worth fighting for even if you lose. We fight so our children can live free. That's the difference between survival and living. Varelli thought about her people, how they had long stopped fighting for anything except orders. In that moment, she understood why humans could not be conquered. They were not just fighting for land or power. They were fighting for meaning, the breaking point, but General Kor had been watching. He saw her speaking with Reynolds and spreading dangerous ideas. He decided to act. One night, while the ship drifted in low orbit above Jupiter, Kor led a group of loyal officers to the bridge. Commander Threx has betrayed the Dominion, he declared. She sympathizes with the enemy. She must be removed from command. Vareli entered just as blasters were drawn. Kor, she said calmly, stand down. This is not the way. You are no longer fit to lead, he growled. The Dominion will not tolerate weakness. Reynolds stepped forward from behind her, raising his hands. Listen to her. She's trying to save lives, yours included. The soldiers aimed their weapons. The bridge filled with tension like a storm about to break. Vareli closed her eyes for a brief second, then whispered, Enough. In a blur of motion, she activated her armor shield pulse, disarming half the mutineers. She fought not to kill but to disable. Reynolds grabbed a control rod and used it to block a strike, surprising everyone. When the chaos ended, Kor lay on the ground, defeated but alive. Vareli looked around at the exhausted crew and said, You call me weak because I hesitate to destroy, but true strength is knowing when to stop. The dawn of understanding. After the mutiny, Vareli knew there was no turning back. The Dominion would not forgive her defiance. She stood beside Reynolds at the viewport, watching Jupiter's red storms swirl below. You have changed me, she said quietly. Reynolds looked at her with a soft smile. Maybe you changed yourself. I just reminded you what you already knew. She turned to him. Perhaps. But now I understand something my people have forgotten. Courage without compassion is emptiness. Power without heart is nothing. For the first time in centuries, Vareli Threx felt something that had no name in her language. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was freedom. And deep in her mind, a quiet decision began to form. One that would change the fate of both their worlds. The stars shimmered like a million watching eyes beyond the large glass window of the command bridge. Commander Vareli Threx stood silently, hands folded behind her back. The light of Jupiter's red storms danced on her armor, but her thoughts were far from the present. She had seen countless battles, faced fleets stronger than her own, and defeated enemies that entire civilizations feared to name. Yet now, as she gazed into the endless dark of space, she felt something new, something she could not define. It was not fear. It was not weakness. It was doubt, and within it a spark of hope. Behind her, Captain Reynolds watched her quietly. He no longer wore the torn uniform of a prisoner. The crew, though wary of him, had stopped treating him like an enemy. His courage during the mutiny had changed their view of him, and perhaps of humans in general. Vareli turned toward him. The Dominion has sent me a final order, she said. Her voice was calm but heavy. They have lost patience. They demand I destroy Earth. Reynolds' expression hardened. You're not going to do that. Vareli did not answer right away. She looked at the stars again, her eyes reflecting their pale glow. If I disobey, they will send the execution fleet. They will destroy my ship and every soul aboard. And they will attack Earth themselves. So either you destroy us, Reynolds said quietly, or you defy your own people. Yes, she said. Either way, there will be war. The weight of a decision. The command bridge was silent except for the soft hum of the engines. Vareli could feel the eyes of her officers on her. Many were loyal, others unsure. The mutiny had divided them, and now every choice she made could decide their fate. She walked to the center of the bridge, her long silver cape flowing behind her. Her voice rang steady and clear. Bring up the image of Earth. The holographic sphere appeared, a blue and green world glowing softly against the black. Clouds swirled gently over oceans and continents. Vareli stared at it for a long time. It was not a perfect planet. It carried scars of wars, pollution, and chaos. Yet there was beauty too. Beauty born of struggle and will. To her it looked alive. This is what the Dominion fears, she said quietly. Not their weapons or numbers, but their spirit. Reynolds stepped forward. Then don't give them what they want. Don't become what they expect you to be, she looked at him. You think I can stop them? I think, Reynolds said, that one person with courage can make others remember their own. The message from the Dominion moments later, a transmission came through. The Dominion Council appeared on the main screen, tall figures bathed in gold light, their expressions cold and sharp. Commander Threx, said the High Chancellor, you have delayed victory long enough. The humans refuse surrender. The Council orders immediate planetary cleansing. Vareli's jaw tightened. There are civilians on that world. Billions of lives. They are irrelevant, the Chancellor said. A single act of destruction will teach the galaxy to obey. Your hesitation has already weakened our honor. Varelli straightened her back. With respect, Chancellor, I believe destruction will only make them stronger. You cannot erase their spirit with fire. The Chancellor's eyes narrowed. You speak like them, Commander. Have you forgotten who you are? She paused. The silence stretched. Every officer held their breath. I have not forgotten, she said at last. But perhaps I have finally remembered what it means to feel, the council members murmured angrily. The Chancellor's voice rose. Then you are no longer Aurelian. You are a traitor. The screen went dark. The defiance Reynolds stepped closer. You just declared war on your own empire. Varelli nodded slowly. Yes, and they will come for us soon. Then what do we do? She turned to her crew. Many were trembling. Others exchanged uncertain looks. But Varelli's voice was calm, firm, and full of something none of them had ever heard before. Faith. We stand for what is right, she said. We are soldiers, not executioners. We were meant to protect life, not end it. One of her younger officers whispered. But, Commander, the Dominion will destroy us. Varelli looked at him. Then we will face them as free being, not as tools. For a long moment, silence ruled the bridge. Then, one by one, her crew members stood straighter. Some placed hands over their hearts, others saluted. Reynolds smiled quietly. Looks like you've started a revolution. The battle begins hours later. Sensors detected movement at the edge of the system. The execution fleet had arrived, massive warships glowing with crimson light stretching across space like an iron wall. Varelli watched the tactical display. Her fleet was smaller, damaged and outnumbered, but retreat was no longer an option. Signal the fleet, she ordered. Tell them we fight for freedom. The comms officer hesitated. Commander, some ships may not follow your lead. Then they will make their own choice, she said softly. When the first wave of the execution fleet opened fire, the void erupted in blinding light. Missiles streaked between ships. Energy blasts flashed like lightning across the black. The soundless storm of war began. Varelli's ship shook violently as shields absorbed the first impacts. Sparks showered the bridge. Return fire, she commanded. Target their weapon arrays. Disable, don't destroy. Reynolds gripped the railing beside her. You're going to fight them without killing them? Yes, she said. We fight differently now. Hope in the darkness, the battle raged for hours. The stars burned with the light of explosions, but through it all, Varelli's fleet held their ground. Some Aurelian captains, inspired by her defiance, turned against the Dominion and joined her side. Reynolds coordinated human communication codes to jam enemy transmissions. Your ships can't break their shield lines, he shouted over the alarms. But if you overload the graviton fields here, Varelli finished his thought. We can disable their engines instead of destroying them. Clever, human. Together, they worked like two minds sharing one will. At last, a massive blast rocked the execution fleet's flagship. Its engines failed, drifting powerless through the void. A sudden stillness followed. The remaining ships stopped firing. The Dominion commander's voice echoed over open channels. Commander Threx. Why? Varelli stood tall, her voice calm. Because we are more than conquerors. Because there is strength in mercy. The aftermath, when the smoke cleared, the battlefield was silent. The execution fleet had withdrawn. Earth still turned peacefully below, untouched. Inside the bridge, the crew cheered softly. Not in triumph, but in relief. Varelli looked around them and said, Remember this moment. We did not win through destruction. We won through choice. Reynolds stood beside her, smiling. You just changed the course of history. Not I, she said. We did. A new path days later, the surviving ships loyal to Varelli gathered near the asteroid belt. She addressed them through a broadcast. Brothers and sisters, she began. Today we choose a new purpose. No longer will we serve fear. We will become guardians. Defenders of life, not its destroyers. If the Dominion calls us traitors, let them. The truth will reach the stars. Her words spread across the fleet, and for the first time in Aurelian history, warriors felt pride not in conquest, but in compassion. Reynolds watched her from the side. So what now, Commander? She smiled faintly. Now we find a home, somewhere between your world and mine. Maybe one day both will walk together among the stars. He nodded. That's something worth fighting for. The legend lives on years later. Stories of Varelli Threx, the Unbroken, spread across galaxies. But the tale changed. She was no longer remembered as the conqueror of worlds. She became the defiant commander, the one who stood against her own empire for the sake of humanity. Some said she disappeared beyond known space with her rebel fleet, protecting colonies from pirates and wars. Others believed she settled on a hidden world, helping humans and Aurelians build a new future together. But among the stars, one truth remained. The day came when the strongest warrior in the galaxy met a human, and that meeting changed everything, because sometimes true power does not come from strength or fear. It comes from the courage to choose compassion, and that choice changed the stars forever.